It was a beautiful afternoon. The sky was painted in soft shades of blue, with just a few lazy clouds drifting by. The breeze was gentle, the sun warm, and everything in the city seemed perfectly normal. But on the old millstone bridge, something unthinkable was about to happen. A man in his mid-30s stood near the edge of the bridge. His tailored grey suit clung perfectly to his athletic frame. His hair was slicked back, his shoes gleamed. His name was Leonard Blackwood, the heir to one of the wealthiest, most powerful families in the city, an empire built on luxury, reputation, and secrets. Gripped tightly in his hand was the fragile wrist of a little girl. Her name was Emily, only 7 years old. Her hair was a cascade of wild red curls. Her dress, yellow with little white flowers, fluttered in the wind. Her large, brown eyes were filled with something no child should ever carry: fear. A fear so deep it paralyzed her tiny body. Emily wasn't like other children. She was different. Diagnosed with autism, her mind worked in patterns, sequences, numbers. While the world around her often seemed chaotic, confusing, and loud, her brain found comfort in math, repetition, and logic. But none of that could help her understand what was about to happen. Her small voice trembled. "Daddy, please, you're hurting me." Leonard's jaw clenched, his nostrils flared, his eyes were cold, emotionless. "You ruined everything, Emily, everything. You exposed numbers you should have never spoken. You embarrassed me. You destroyed everything I worked for." Tears ran down her cheeks as she tried to pull away. "I promise. I won't say anything again. I won't, please." But Leonard wasn't listening. His mind was consumed with rage. Hours earlier, in the middle of the most important corporate meeting of his career, Emily had innocently corrected one of his fake financial projections out loud. Her little voice had sliced through the silence like a knife. "Daddy, 73.5% of 242 million isn't 193 million. It's 177,987,000. The silence in the room was suffocating. His clients, investors, and board members had stared, stunned. Leonard tried to laugh it off, tried to explain it as a child's innocent mistake. But the damage was done. The deal collapsed. His reputation, years in the making, shattered. And now, standing on this bridge, he had convinced himself there was only one way to erase the problem. His hand tightened around Emily's wrist. "You were never supposed to be part of this world." "Emily?" Never. Without warning, he lifted her small body up, dangling her over the railing. Her tiny hands grasped at his jacket, her feet kicking desperately. "No, Daddy, please, no." Leonard's eyes flickered with something. Maybe hesitation, maybe regret, but it was crushed by something colder, something darker. "Goodbye, Emily." His hands released. Her scream was swallowed by the wind as her body plummeted toward the roaring river below. The splash echoed. Leonard stood still, breathing heavily. He adjusted his cufflinks, smoothed his jacket, and turned his back on the river without a second glance. In his mind, the problem was solved. What he didn't know was that someone had seen everything. Near the trees, hiding among the bushes, a pair of sharp eyes had been watching. Eyes filled with intelligence, loyalty, and instinct. A Doberman, strong, muscular, black coat glistening. His name was Max, and what this dog did next would change everything. Max took a step forward. His ears perked. His eyes locked onto the water. His instincts screamed. Every second mattered now. Without a second thought, Max bolted toward the edge of the bridge. His paws hit the concrete, faster, harder, stronger, and then he jumped. The mission had just begun. Max's body sliced through the air like an arrow. His powerful muscles tightened as gravity pulled him downward. His ears flattened and his eyes scanned the violent river below. The splash was violent. The cold water hit him like a wall of ice, forcing the air from his lungs. The current was relentless, spinning his body, pulling, dragging. But Max wasn't an ordinary dog. He wasn't built to surrender. His paws kicked hard, cutting through the water. His nose searched, his ears strained, his eyes darted desperately, scanning for any sign of her. Then there, a flash of yellow, Max lunged. His jaws carefully caught the fabric of her dress. Emily's small body floated face down, motionless, her limbs limp. Her tiny hands barely moved. No. Max tightened his grip, making sure his teeth held the dress without hurting her. He turned, fighting against the current, paddling with every ounce of strength his body had. The water tried to rip her away, tried to pull them both under. But Max was stronger. He had to be. Emily coughed. Her head tilted slightly above the water as her lungs fought to take in air, coughing up the river that had nearly swallowed her whole. Her eyes were half open, her lips blue, but she was alive. Max pushed harder, his powerful legs kicking like pistons. He spotted a slope of rocks leading to a grassy riverbank ahead. It was their only chance. The distance looked impossible. 50 meters against this current for any other dog, maybe, but not for Max. His breathing grew heavier, his limbs burned, but failure wasn't an option. With one last burst of strength, Max pulled Emily toward the shore. His paws hit the slippery rocks. He stumbled, but never let go. He climbed, dragging her tiny body out of the river inch by inch. Finally, with a final push, he dragged her onto the grass and collapsed beside her, gasping for air. Emily coughed again. Water poured from her mouth. Her little chest rose and fell in uneven gasps. Her arms trembled, her lips quivered, but she was alive. Max placed his head against her tiny body, listening. Her heartbeat was faint, but there, his job wasn't done yet. His eyes darted toward the bridge. The man in the grey suit was gone, his silhouette disappearing down the road. Convinced his dark deed was finished, he had no idea. No idea that the very problem he tried to erase was still breathing, still alive. And Max wasn't just going to save her life. He was going to protect her. He was going to make sure the world knew exactly what happened on that bridge. Max pressed his nose against Emily's cheek as if to say, "I've got you now," because from this moment forward, she wasn't alone anymore. Max paced around Emily, never letting his eyes stray from her tiny frame. His breathing was heavy, his muscles still tense from the fight against the river. His instincts were screaming, "Stay alert, stay ready." Emily trembled on the wet grass. Her arms were wrapped tightly around her knees. Her soaked dress clung to her small body, and her lips were still pale, but color was slowly returning to her face. Her mind, overwhelmed, went into survival mode. She rocked back and forth, whispering to herself in a rhythmic chant, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. It was her way to calm the chaos. Patterns, numbers, order in the middle of fear. Max stayed by her side, never moving more than a few inches away. His presence was her shield. His gaze scanned the surroundings non-stop. Then a sound, a vehicle. Max's ears snapped forward. His body went rigid. A truck. An old blue pickup rolled slowly down the dirt path near the riverbank. Dust swirled behind its tires. Inside was an older woman, silver-haired, with sun-kissed skin and hands worn from years of work. Her name was Margaret. She lived alone on a small farm not far from the river. A woman who had seen too much pain in life to ignore a scene like this. As her truck rounded the bend, her eyes caught something that made her foot slam the brakes. A Doberman, soaked, standing guard over a tiny, trembling child. Her mouth fell open. Her heart stopped. "Oh, my God!" Margaret flung her door open and stepped out with her hands raised slightly, approaching carefully. Max's body stiffened. He stood between Emily and the approaching stranger, his eyes locked onto Margaret. His chest puffed, his muscles flexed, ready to defend. It was as if he were saying, "Try me. Just try me." But Margaret knew dogs, and she knew this wasn't aggression. This was protection. She lowered her voice. "Easy, boy. Easy. I'm not here to hurt her. I swear." Max tilted his head slightly, his eyes narrowing, reading her every Breath every step. Margaret knelt on the wet grass, never taking her eyes off the dog. "Are you a guardian angel?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Max glanced at Emily, then back at Margaret. "Yes." Without moving from his post, Max allowed Margaret to step a little closer. Margaret reached out a weathered, shaking hand. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe now. You hear me? You're safe." Emily didn't speak. She didn't scream. She didn't run. Her small fingers clenched Max's collar as if it was the only thing tethering her to the world. Max let out a soft rumble but didn't move. His eyes said everything. If this woman meant no harm, she could approach. Margaret pulled off her jacket and wrapped it around the child's tiny, shivering shoulders. "Poor thing. What happened to you?" She glanced down at Max, who stood so still, so determined, as if the universe itself had appointed him protector. "Come on. Let's get you both out of here. I've got warm blankets, food, safety." Max stayed close, not letting a single inch come between him and Emily, as Margaret gently led them toward her truck. As they drove toward her farm, Margaret's mind raced. Who would do this? Who would leave a child like this? Her eyes drifted to the rearview mirror. She studied Emily's face, the red curls, the freckles, the shape of her jaw. Her heart skipped. No, it couldn't be. No, no, no. But deep down, something told her, this child, this beautiful, fragile, brilliant child, she wasn't a stranger at all. She was family. The blue pickup rumbled along the dirt road leading to Margaret's farm. The tires kicked up dust as the truck bounced over bumps and potholes. In the rearview mirror, Margaret kept glancing back at Emily, who sat curled up in the corner of the seat, wrapped tightly in the oversized jacket. Max sat beside her, his body tense but calm. His eyes scanned the windows, watching, guarding, ready. Margaret's hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel. Her heart pounded harder with every glance at the child. Something about that face, the wild red curls, the delicate shape of her nose, stirred memories she had locked away for years. No, it can't be. Her voice cracked inside her own mind. But her gut, her soul, they screamed a different truth. As the truck pulled up to the farmhouse, Margaret jumped out and opened the passenger door. "Come on, honey, let's get you warm." Max hopped down first, landing lightly but with his body positioned protectively in front of Emily. Only when she stepped down and grabbed his collar did he move forward. Inside the house, the air smelled of cinnamon and old wood. A fireplace crackled in the corner, and the soft ticking of an ancient clock filled the room with a sense of safety. Margaret fetched warm blankets, fresh clothes, and a towel. She gently helped Emily out of the soaked dress, drying her off and wrapping her in a soft flannel shirt that swallowed her tiny frame. She brought hot cocoa in a mug with both hands, kneeling down. "Here, sweetheart. Drink. You're safe now. Nobody's going to hurt you." Emily took the mug but didn't drink. Her fingers traced the rim. Her lips moved, whispering to herself. 7, 14, 28, 56. Margaret recognized it instantly, multiples of 7. Her heart nearly collapsed. She remembered. Years ago, a tiny red-haired girl sitting on the floor, lining up buttons and whispering the same sequences. "No, no, this can't be." She stood quickly, her breath caught in her throat. Her legs shook as she crossed the living room to a tall, dusty bookshelf. She reached behind it and pulled out a box, worn, taped, marked with faded handwriting. She ripped the tape and opened it. Photographs, letters, a small baby blanket, and then a photo. A young woman with fiery red curls stood smiling, arm in arm with a sharply dressed man in a grey suit. Her daughter, Evelyn, and next to her, Leonard Blackwood. Tears flooded Margaret's eyes. Her hands trembled violently as she stared at the photo. It can't be. It can't. But it was. That child sitting in her living room wasn't just a victim. She was her granddaughter. Margaret collapsed onto the couch, covering her mouth to hold back a scream of grief, regret, and disbelief. Her mind raced back to those dark years. Evelyn, her only daughter, had fallen for the wrong man. Leonard Blackwood, a cold, calculating heir to a fortune. When Evelyn got pregnant, Leonard had turned his back, told her the child was a mistake, refused to accept responsibility. Heartbroken and humiliated, Evelyn left, disappeared. Margaret never saw her again. Years passed. Then the letter arrived. Evelyn was gone. A sudden illness. Margaret had no chance to say goodbye. No chance to fight. No chance to ask, where was the child? Where was her granddaughter? And now the answer sat right there, rocking back and forth, counting numbers, holding on to a Doberman who had become her shield against the entire world. Tears streamed down Margaret's face as she whispered to herself, "Evelyn, my baby, I failed you, but I won't fail her. I won't fail her." She stood. Her hands trembled, her spine straightened, her voice was a whisper, but iron hard. "You are safe now. I swear on my life, no one will ever hurt you again." Outside, Max sat by the window, his eyes locked on the road, ears perked, because instinct told him trouble wasn't over. Not yet. The sun was barely rising. The first rays of light peeked over the hills, but the air was heavy. Something was wrong. Margaret could feel it in her bones. Inside the house, Emily sat on the floor, wrapped in blankets, rocking back and forth, repeating her numbers like a sacred ritual. 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. Max stood by the front door, ears perked, head low, body tense. His sharp eyes locked onto the distant sound of tires on gravel. His nose twitched. His instinct screamed one word: danger. Margaret pulled back the curtain. A black SUV, no license plates, slow, deliberate, creeping down the dirt road toward her property. Her chest tightened. Oh no, they're here. She rushed to the corner of the living room and grabbed an old double-barreled shotgun that hadn't been used in years. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from fury. Her jaw clenched. Not today, not this child. Max stepped closer to Emily, positioning himself between her and the door. His body stiffened, his breathing slowed. His muscles vibrated like coiled steel. He was ready. Outside, the SUV rolled to a stop. 2 men stepped out. Black clothes, gloves, no badges, no words, just intent. The taller one walked toward the house, scanning the windows. The other popped the trunk and pulled out a duffel bag. Inside, rope, duct tape, and plastic restraints. They weren't here to talk. Inside the house, Emily's voice grew faster, her rocking sharper. Danger, danger, distance 37 meters, 2 targets. 1 primary, 1 secondary. Probability of forced entry, 94%. Margaret cocked the shotgun and stood by the window, her hands shaking. Max began a low, deep growl. His eyes turned into fire. His entire body transformed into a living weapon. The first man tested the doorknob. Locked, he signaled to the second. They moved along the side of the house toward the kitchen window. The glass cracked. That was it. Max exploded forward, a missile of muscle, speed, and fury. The window shattered as the man tried to climb in, but before his feet even touched the floor, Max's jaws clamped down on his arm. Bone cracked. The man screamed. Max yanked him inside like a rag doll, slamming him to the ground. Teeth sank deeper. His massive paws pinned the man's shoulders, growling, snarling, ready to finish it. The second man rushed to help, only to meet the cold barrel of Margaret's shotgun pointed directly at his chest. "Move! I dare you!" The man froze, hands raised. "Lady, you don't know who you're messing with." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "No, you don't know who you're messing with," she fired, a warning shot. The dirt exploded inches from his feet. The man dropped to his knees, hands behind his head. "Get down! Now, or the next one isn't in the dirt." Inside, Max held the first man down, his jaws locked, teeth pressed into flesh. The man sobbed, begging, thrashing, helpless against the sheer force of the Doberman. Emily stayed curled in the corner, rocking, whispering numbers like a prayer. 72, 144, 288. Max glanced. At her, then back at the man beneath him. He wasn't letting go. not until someone told him to. Sirens in the distance. Growing louder, the cavalry was coming. Margaret cocked the shotgun again, standing over the trembling man on his knees. "You picked the wrong house." The sound of police tires screeching onto the property filled the air. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows. Officers jumped out, weapons drawn. "Get down, hands where we can see them." Within seconds, both men were tackled, cuffed, and dragged toward the cruisers. A female officer approached the house, carefully lowering her weapon. As she stepped inside, "Ma'am, is everyone all right?" Margaret lowered the shotgun, her hands shaking as adrenaline began to fade. She pointed to Emily, who was still rocking, holding Max's collar like her lifeline. "She's all right, thanks to him." The officer knelt beside Emily, her eyes softening. As she saw the little girl's face, "We've got you, sweetheart. You're safe now." But Margaret knew this wasn't over, not even close, because whoever sent those men would soon learn the same thing Leonard was about to discover. When you try to destroy a child, you awaken something far more dangerous than you could ever imagine. Police cars lined the front of the farmhouse. Red and blue lights flashed against the wooden walls, lighting up the yard like a crime scene from a movie. Officers cuffed the two attackers, shoved them into the back seats of the cruisers, and slammed the doors. Inside the house, Emily sat on the floor, her knees hugged tightly to her chest. Her small fingers ran across Max's back, feeling his fur, anchoring herself to the only thing that felt safe in her world. Max stayed glued to her side. His body, though no longer tense, remained ready. His eyes scanned every person, every movement. Margaret paced across the living room. Her hands trembled as she clutched an old envelope pulled from a box hidden in her closet. Faded handwriting, scrawled across the front, "Evelyn, private." She opened it again, as if confirming the truth would somehow make it less impossible. Inside were letters, photos, a copy of her daughter's birth certificate, and a copy of the one thing that shattered her soul, a paternity test. The father listed Leonard Blackwood. Her hand ran down her face, wiping the tears that refused to stop. It was real. The child sitting in her living room, the girl with the brilliant, pattern-driven mind, was her granddaughter. The same granddaughter she never got to hold. The same granddaughter her daughter was forced to hide from the world. A soft knock on the door pulled her back to reality. "Mom, we need to talk," said the lead officer. Margaret nodded, her jaw tight. They sat at the kitchen table. Margaret laid the folder between them. "This is my granddaughter," she said, her voice steady. "Her mother was my only daughter. Her father is Leonard Blackwood." The officer blinked. "Wait, the Leonard Blackwood? The CEO?" "Yes, that one." The room fell silent. "Mom, this isn't just a custody issue. This is bigger than anything I've ever dealt with." "You have no idea," Margaret said, sliding the folder toward him, "because that man tried to kill her. He threw her off the Millstone Bridge. My dog, this dog, saved her life." The officer leaned back, stunned. "You're saying the heir of Blackwood Enterprises tried to kill his own daughter?" "No, I'm not saying it. I'm telling you, that's exactly what happened." Emily, still rocking, murmured softly, 73, 146, a 292. Max nudged her hand, grounding her back. The officer stood, ran both hands through his hair, pacing. "If this is true, and you've got evidence, this isn't just a family crime. This is fraud, corporate crime, attempted murder, cover-ups. This is national." Margaret inhaled sharply. "Oh, officer, you haven't even seen the start of it." She pulled out a second envelope. Inside, detailed notes, not hers, Emily's, pages filled with numbers, equations, dates, figures, all from memory, all exact. The officer flipped through them. His jaw fell. "Open, these are financial statements, corrected statements, all illegal, fabricated, altered to hide millions, no, billions. Where did this come from?" Emily saw them. She has photographic memory. She's seen every spreadsheet in his office, every fake document, every offshore transfer. She remembers it all. The officer swallowed hard. Dear God. And that's why he tried to erase her, Margaret said, her voice cold as steel. Because she's the one person in the world who can take down the Blackwood Empire. The officer stepped outside to make a call. Inside, Margaret knelt by Emily, cupped her little face and whispered, "You are not broken, my darling. You are not too much. You are not a burden. You are the key that's going to expose the truth. You are the storm that man never saw coming." Emily didn't respond, but she wrapped her arms around Max's neck, pressing her cheek into his fur. Her body finally relaxed, just a little. Outside, the officer's voice was tight on the radio. "Get me the district attorney, the FBI, financial crimes, everyone. We're about to blow the lid off the biggest scandal this city has ever seen." Because the girl they tried to erase was the one destiny had chosen to destroy them. By the next morning, the entire city was buzzing. News vans parked along the fences of Margaret's farm. Reporters scrambled to set up cameras, microphones, satellite dishes. The hum of helicopters echoed in the distance. Every major network was live. Breaking news. Blackwood Empire under investigations, hawking allegations. CEO linked to attempted murder of his own daughter. The girl who remembers everything and the Doberman who saved her life. Inside the farmhouse, it felt like a war room. FBI agents sat at the kitchen table, poring over pages of handwritten notes, numbers, charts, dates, transactions, not printed spreadsheets, not corporate reports. Emily's memory. Her tiny hands flipped through sheets of paper, pointing, correcting, drawing connections. "Here," she said softly, tapping the page. "Transfer from Alpha Holdings to Cayman account. 3.2 million. August 12th. Agents cross-checked the numbers with subpoenaed records. Perfect. Every detail matched. One agent stared at her, stunned. How? How does she remember all this? Margaret stood behind her, arms crossed. She's autistic. Her brain stores patterns most people can't even see. She doesn't forget. Ever. Another agent whispered, shaking his head. This child. She's a living hard drive. Max sat under the table, his chin resting on Emily's foot, never moving, never leaving her side. Meanwhile, in the tallest skyscraper in the city, Leonard Blackwood stood in front of the massive glass window of his penthouse office. His world, once untouchable, was crumbling before his eyes. Phones rang non-stop, emails flooded his inbox. His attorneys spoke over each other, panic rising in their voices. The SEC is coming after us. The IRS just froze 5 accounts. CNBC's on the line. CNN wants a statement. And sir, the FBI has executed a warrant. They're seizing your corporate servers. Leonard's hands trembled. This isn't happening. This can't be happening. Veronica, his head of public relations, and his secret partner in crime, paced frantically. She knows. The girl. She saw the numbers. She remembered. She figured it out. Leonard spun toward her, face pale. But she's just a kid. Veronica slammed her hand on his desk. A kid with a mind like a machine. And now the whole world is listening. Across every major network, the headline flashed. The autistic child who brought down $1 billion empire, the girl who never forgets, exposes years of fraud. Leonard gripped the window frame, knuckles white. His entire body trembled, not with rage anymore, but with something he never felt before. Fear. Real fear. At the farm, the district attorney arrived in person. She stepped out of her car with a folder under her arm and walked straight into the house. She sat down across from Emily and Margaret. Her voice was steady. This isn't just tax fraud, it's racketeering, it's money laundering, it's attempted murder. We're filing every charge possible. Margaret nodded, squeezing Emily's shoulder. Do it, she said. Burn it all down. The district attorney smiled. We will. But I need one more thing. Your testimony. Emily stopped drawing. She looked up, eyes steady, voice soft but clear. The numbers don't lie. He does. Her small hand pushed the last paper forward. "This is the truth." The attorney stared at her. A child, 7 years old, fragile in body but unstoppable in mind, and realized this wasn't a witness, this was the key to everything. The one piece the entire house of cards never expected, the numbers, were precise. The fraud was exposed, and Leonard Blackwood, the man who thought he could destroy his daughter, was now learning a brutal truth. When you try to erase the wrong person, you erase yourself. The FBI stormed the Blackwood Enterprises building at exactly 7:42 a.m. Helicopters hovered. Agents, in tactical gear, moved like a wave of precision and power. Dozens of employees were escorted out of the glass doors, their hands shaking, their faces pale. News cameras caught every second. Breaking: Blackwood Enterprises raided by FBI SEC, IRS, and the Department of Justice were all involved. It was the biggest corporate takedown in decades. Inside his penthouse office, Leonard watched helplessly from the window as federal agents boxed up servers, seized computers, and walked out with stacks of files, the same files Emily had memorized. To perfection, Veronica paced the floor, her mascara smeared, her hands gripping her head. "It's over, Leonard. It's over. No, 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 no. You don't understand. I built this. I built all of this." Leonard's voice cracked, filled with panic, his confidence shattered. Veronica spun toward him, her face twisted with rage. "You didn't build anything. You lied. You stole. And now a 7-year-old with a Doberman just destroyed you." Leonard stumbled back, his legs weak, falling into the leather chair behind his desk. The TV mounted on the wall showed the live news feed. A photo of Emily appeared on the screen. Underneath it, the headline burned, "The Girl Who Never Forgets." The reporter's voice echoed through the room. This extraordinary child, with a rare photographic memory and an unmatched ability to process numbers, has provided evidence of financial crimes spanning over a decade. Veronica grabbed her purse, panic dripping from her every move. "I'm leaving. I'm done." "You're on your own, Leonard." She ran toward the elevator, heels clicking, slamming the button repeatedly. But before the doors opened, a loud voice rang through the hallway. "FBI, hands where we can see them." Veronica's hands shot into the air. Leonard stood frozen in place, as if hoping, foolishly, that if he stayed still, the nightmare might go away. It didn't. The office doors burst open. 4 agents swarmed in. "Leonard Blackwood, you are under arrest for racketeering, tax evasion, securities fraud, and attempted murder." No, wait. "You don't understand. Hands behind your back. Now." The cold bite of the steel handcuffs locked around his wrists. The cameras downstairs captured it all. Leonard being walked out, head down, jacket wrinkled, hair disheveled. A man who once controlled everything, now controlled by nothing. On every screen, every phone, every TV in the country, his face was plastered. The fall of Blackwood back at the farmhouse. Emily sat cross-legged on the living room rug, Max resting beside her, his head in her lap. She traced patterns in the carpet, humming softly. Margaret stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the news, her heart pounding. She turned toward her granddaughter. "You did it, baby. You did it." Emily didn't look up. Her fingers kept moving. "Equation solved," she whispered. Max let out a slow, peaceful breath, like he understood every word. The phone rang. Margaret answered. "Hello?" A reporter's voice filled the line. "Ms. Dawson, the world wants to hear your story. The story of the girl who brought down the most powerful man in the city." Margaret glanced down at Emily. "No," she said calmly. "You don't understand. This isn't the story of the man who fell. It's the story of the girl who rose." 6 weeks had passed since the collapse of Blackwood Enterprises. The trial made national headlines. The courtroom was packed every day. Reporters fought for front-row seats. Cameras flashed like fireworks. Leonard Blackwood sat behind the defense, a table thinner now, his hair grayer, his face hollow. The man who once stood untouchable was now reduced to nothing but a prisoner in a suit. On the witness stand sat someone no one expected. Not a businessman, not a lawyer, not an adult. Emily, 7 years old, small, delicate. Her legs barely reached the floor, but when she opened her mouth, the entire courtroom went silent. Her voice was steady, calm, pure logic. On March 22nd, he transferred $3.6 million to an offshore account in the Caymans. The entry was disguised as consulting fees. On April 5th, he falsified earnings reports, inflating growth by 34%. That's mathematically impossible based on the quarterly data. The jury stared in disbelief. The judge leaned forward. The reporters typed so fast their keyboards nearly broke. Max sat behind her chair, his head resting on her shoe, eyes alert but calm. Emily's words weren't dramatic. They weren't angry. They were facts, unshakable, undeniable. Leonard buried his face in his hands. The mask was gone. The empire was gone. The lie was gone. And the truth? The truth was sitting on that witness stand, wrapped in a flannel jacket, whispering numbers to herself between questions, like a living, breathing calculator sent by the universe to deliver justice. When the verdict came, the world held its breath. Guilty. On all counts: tax evasion, securities fraud, racketeering, attempted murder, sentenced to 120 years in federal prison. It was over. The Blackwood name no longer represented wealth or power. It represented a warning. But back at the farm, something greater was rising. Margaret stood in the middle of the field, watching construction crews work. Trucks unloaded wood, beams, cement. Fences were being built. Buildings were going up. The Guiding Star Center for Neurodivergent Children was coming to life. The idea was simple but revolutionary, a place where children like Emily weren't treated like problems, a place where differences weren't disabilities, but superpowers. There would be therapy with horses, with dogs, with music, with numbers, with patterns, with nature. On the front gate, a bronze statue stood tall, a Doberman, Max, his ears perked, his body proud, standing next to a small girl holding a book in one hand and resting the other on his head. Beneath the statue, a plaque read, "Here, no one is broken. Here, no one is forgotten. Here, every mind has a place to shine." Emily sat on the porch, drawing complex patterns in a notebook, her red curls bouncing in the wind. She looked up at the sky, then down at Max, who lay beside her, panting softly. "We solved the equation, didn't we?" Max lifted his head and licked her hand. Margaret sat beside them, wrapping an arm around Emily. "You're more than a survivor, baby. You're the proof that sometimes the smallest voice is the one that changes." The world, the sun dipped low on the horizon. The sound of hammers, saws, and laughter echoed across the fields. A new chapter was being written, not with lies, not with fear, but with love, with courage, and with truth. The grand opening of the Guiding Star Center was a day the world would never forget. The front lawn was filled with families, volunteers, therapists, and reporters from around the globe. Banners flapped in the wind. Children laughed as they played with therapy dogs and rode horses trained to understand them in ways no human ever could. Max stood at the entrance, proudly wearing a vest labeled Honorary Founder, his ears perked. His posture strong, his presence commanding, more than a dog, more than a hero, a symbol. Margaret stood on stage, her hand resting on Emily's shoulder. She looked out at the crowd. "There was a time when this story was about a tragedy," she began. "A time when a man believed that money, power, and control were more important than love, more important than family, more important than the truth." She paused, scanning the sea of faces. But standing here, I realized something. This was never his story. This was always her story. She turned to Emily, the girl who remembered everything, who saw the patterns when no one else could, who saw what others tried to hide, and who taught the entire world that being different is not being broken. The crowd erupted into applause. Emily stepped forward, holding the microphone with both hands. Her voice was small but steady. "My mum once told me, numbers don't lie. People do." She glanced down at Max, who sat at her feet, eyes locked on her face. "When someone tries to erase you, remember something. She lifted her chin. You are not a mistake. You are not a problem. You are not too much. You are not broken. She pointed to the sign behind her. This place is for kids like me. Kids whose minds work differently. Kids who don't fit into the boxes the world tries to put them in. She smiled softly. Here, we don't fix kids. We fix the world around them. Tears streamed down faces in the crowd. Margaret knelt beside her, hugging her tightly. You've changed. The world, baby. You really did. Emily looked down at Max. We did. The ceremony ended, but the beginning of something much bigger had just started. Emily spent her days teaching other children how to recognize patterns in math, in music, in nature, how to use their gifts instead of hiding them. Margaret led workshops for parents who once felt hopeless and now saw their children not as burdens, but as miracles. And Max walked the grounds every day. He lay beside children during therapy. He stood guard when someone felt anxious. He nudged hands, comforted souls, and reminded everyone of one simple truth. Heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they walk on 4 legs. The sun set behind the hills, painting the sky in orange and gold. Emily sat on the porch, tracing shapes in the dirt with a stick. Max rested beside her. She looked at him and whispered, You know, the world thought it was breaking me. She smiled, but I was the equation they couldn't solve. Max let out a soft, content sigh, closing his eyes, because the girl they tried to erase became the girl the whole world would never forget. And from that day forward, the legend of a little girl with a brilliant mind, a heart full of courage, and a Doberman who refused to give up became a story passed from generation to generation. Story about truth, about love, and about the undeniable power of never giving up.